All right, welcome, everybody. Another episode of just going through the Moynihan report and just looking at what happened to the black family structure in the United States and how that also affects a lot of people today. So we're just going to continue breaking that down because I believe that this report is it's so revealing, and I think a lot of the modern day talking points and discussions can be charted and traced back to this report and to the history of the foundations of America. And we'll start to look through some of the issues that also happened in Britain as well, because this dominates all of our viewpoints, all of what we think about when it comes to relationships and marriage and all of these sorts of different things. And I think this is one of the things that I will constantly be discussing, is the fact that we need to be practicing marriage as much as possible, just so that we can always be in a position to really benefit and drive change across our entire communities. So what I will do is I will go back to the summary that I've been reading, and as I've said before, don't believe me when it comes to all of this. Take a look and check this stuff out for yourself. Let me move that, okay? And I will so what I will do is I will just bring this down here, just so that I'm not I'm a bit out of the way so you could actually read the text. So this is chapter 4 of the Moynihan report, okay? So, and this is called the Tangle of Pathology, okay? This is one of the things, so this is now looking at exactly how these things come, what are the after effects, okay? What has been the consequences of this? Okay, so let's look at this. So that the Negro, so the first bullet point, that the Negro American has survived that all is extraordinary. A lesser people might simply have died out, as indeed others have. And I think this is maybe referencing to other groups like maybe the Native Americans, okay? And that the Negro community has not only survived, but in this political generation has entered national affairs as a moderate, humane and constructive national force, is the highest testament to the healing powers of the democratic ideal and the creative vitality of the Negro people. And this is one of the, and this report is one of the reasons why I like it, is that it is quite, I wouldn't say it's quite balanced, but it's quite honest. It's quite honest. And we see here, like, the fact that there is something about the Negro human spirit, and in general, as a human population, we don't take things lying down. We do want to try and change things, especially when it comes to injustices, okay? And in a sense, they're tipping their hat to the fact that even though what's been done to black Americans has really destroyed them, to the point where, they've now, because obviously bear in mind this was written in 1965, they were able to still engage in political affairs, okay, and they've entered international affairs. And obviously the backdrop to some of this is the fact that there's civil rights that will come after this, okay? So next bullet point, but it may not be supposed that the Negro American community has not paid a fearful price for the incredible mistreatment to which it has been subjected over the past 3 centuries, okay? And this is where things get really technical and probably really difficult, is that when it comes to this racialized slavery system, it has been something that has happened for the past 3 centuries when they looked at this from in 1965. So 60 is when they started to produce laws and started to sort of racialize slavery. Okay, and I will talk about the fact that one of the reasons why they chose black people to be slaves, because there were there were English slaves, okay, and they also tried to enslave the Native Americans, or what some people have called in the past Red Indians, okay, but we call them Native Americans now. And yeah, so it's very yeah, this was all steeped in a lot of history, as we can see from movies and such. In essence, the Negro community has been forced into a matriarchal structure. Okay, so this is why you always have to talk about that when it comes to relationships, all these discussions that you see on all these podcasts and all online. If people are not going back to this stuff, please stop talking to them, because this is essentially what it comes down to. If you can't go down to the brass tacks, to the foundation of where things started, to have a discussion from that point of view, all we're doing is having talking points. When we're talking about the fact that black women, for example, are more educated than black men, it goes back to slavery and racism. Like all of this stuff, the fact that a lot of people in the black community don't believe in marriage. You'll hear them say things like, "Oh, marriage is just a white man's paper," you know, for example, which I would reject that, even though it has been sort of bastardized because of slavery and racism. Marriage is something that God has instituted from the beginning of human history, that we see from the book of Genesis. Okay, so so the Negro community has been forced into a matriarchal structure, which, because it is out of line with the rest of the American society, seriously retards the progress of the group as a whole and imposes a crushing burden on the Negro male, and in consequence, a great many Negro women as well. And that's one of the most staggering aspects of sort of the Moynihan report. The fact that it is able to sort of really pinpoint a lot of the issues for the Negro and the black community's plight. It has been able to systematically find all of the issues, and there are other reports like the Kerner Commission. I think there was also something called a Mohawk Conference, and you know, again, all of these things can be. We can go back to some of those things and talk about some of the things that came out about this report. But the reason why I like using the Moynihan report is because it's something we've all lived through this past 60 years in some form or fashion, and it's the most recent memory for us that we can all sort of imagine in our minds. Okay, even from music and stuff like Motown and stuff like that. Okay, so now let's go to the next page. Okay, so let's see if we can zoom in on this a bit. Okay, so there is presumably no special. Well, let me highlight that. So because it's a bit smaller. So there is presumably no special reason why a society in which males are dominant in family relationships is to be preferred to a matriarchal arrangement. Okay. However, it is clearly a disadvantage for a minority group to be operating on one principle, while the great majority of the population, and the one with the most advantages to begin with, so that's the white people, is operating on another. This is the present situation of the Negro. Ours, so that's the American society. America is a society which presumes male leadership in private and public affairs. The arrangements of society facilitate such leadership and reward it. A subculture, such as that of the Negro American, in which this is not a pattern, is placed at a distinct disadvantage. Okay, so the American society, any society, most society, are operating on what a lot of people will call today patriarchy. I don't like using the word patriarchy. And again, I will define why I don't like using terms like patriarchy. I prefer to use patriarchs or patriarchal. and because patriarchy is a word that came out in the 1970s, whereas patriarch is more of a biblical term, and it's not because patriarchy is all about something like with misogyny, and it's a recent term that's come out of feminism. So when it comes to private and public affairs, male leadership happens in the white community, in the Arab community, in the Nigerian community, but in the black community, this is not the case. So in private and public affairs, they are dealing in a matriarchal structure. So this is why you will see in some of these like old time movies like Fences, for example, you know, some of these other slave movies, you will see that the woman is the one who's actually interacting with the dominant society. Okay, she's the one who pays the bill, she's the one who goes to the shops, she's the one who advocates and has conversations with the owners. Okay, this is why things are out of order in the black community. Okay, and this is why the subculture, which is the Negro American culture, this male leadership in private and public affairs is not the pattern, and this always keeps you at a disadvantage. This is why I will always advocate for every man to understand, once you become a husband and a father, you are the leader of your home. And this is why in society they have a massive issue with any opinion of a straight black man. Okay, they do not want to hear from you. They do not, they will do anything. They will do anything and everything. And this is why I go back to, where is it on this thing where I talked about in the previous episode, where it was talking about so when the male role is broken, the mother and child unit becomes the default family core. And if you look at things like what some of the banks have done in terms of funding the black people, they always do stuff for black women, but they don't do stuff for black men. And I think, is it JP Morgan, during COVID times, I think they put together a 10 billion fund or £5 billion fund to help black women, but you'll never see a fund started for black men. Okay, and this is why, again, one of the reasons why this is still a discussion, this is why things are still being perpetuated. You still see the marginalization of black men in corporate spaces when it comes to funding for businesses and loans and homes. They do not fund things that are for black men, but they will fund and they will subvert, they will go past black men and go to black women to fund them instead of the black man. Because if you fund the black man, that puts him in a position where he can begin to lead his family. Okay, and even when you think about things like the Black Lives Matter, again, that is a group of women who have been funded by things like the Open Society, and I'll dig out the YouTube videos because I've watched them quite a while, and you see there was a scandal probably about 4 or 5 years ago now. Probably even longer than that, where if you go onto their mission statement, they talk about the black family and they don't mention black men. Okay, so this is how I talk. This is why I will always talk about the deception that's going on currently within the black community. Okay, it's about what we need to do is actually empower black men and let them know that they are the leaders of their community, and we need to empower those men. Okay, so yeah, because as I said before, the subculture, whether you're in Britain or in the UK, okay, you need to understand that you are the man, you are the leader. Okay, you have the authority, and God has given us that authority. And you see that in Ephesians 5. You know, if you are building your marriage and you are building your family, and I would honestly tell you, do not, get involved with anybody or any woman who doesn't believe in men being the leader of their marriage and their family. It's not God's design. And this is why slavery and racism is such a insidious and pervasive system, because black men do not feel as if they can be the leaders. They can't lead their community, and it has been subverted by the dominant society, and it has been also subverted by ideologies like feminism, and also the fact that a lot of black women still today want to try and lead and be the backbone of the community, when it should be, and it has to be, black men. And that's the way God has designed all men across all groups. That's why you don't see the same thing happening in the Russian community, the Chinese community, the Asian community. All of those communities are all led by their men. But in Black America, it's Big Mama, it's the women. Okay, and I've got media that I'll start to show in the subsequent videos. Okay, so here, an earlier word of caution should be repeated. There is much evidence that a considerable number of Negro families have managed to break out of the tangle of pathology and to establish themselves as stable, effective units, living according to the patterns of American society in general. Okay, E. Franklin Fraser, so this is a black psychologist. Okay, so just bear in mind that the backdrop of this report is that Daniel Patrick Moynihan was an Irish immigrant. Okay, but to write this report, he went to a black psychologist. Okay, and I've got the book. Well, no, I don't have E. Franklin Fraser's book. I've got Kenneth Clark's book. I think it was E. Franklin Fraser was a sociologist. I think, yeah, he was a sociologist. Kenneth Clark was a psychologist. I think him and his wife worked together on producing the Dole studies. So E. Franklin Fraser has suggested that the middle-class Negro American family is, if anything, more patriarchal and protective of its children than the general run of such families. Given equal opportunities, the children of these families will perform as well or better than their white peers. They need no help from anyone and ask no one. And this, again, is why I will keep coming back to the family structure. As black men, black women, we have to perform that we have to build our families, because you see that once black people get into the middle class, they are more patriarchal and they are protective of its children. When you see all these single mother led families, single mother led homes, they are not as protective in general as such families. Okay, and this is why you start to see that cycle that we talked about in terms of early pregnancy, low education, low income, unstable family structure. Okay, and it repeats itself across generations. And the best way to get out of that is to get married. Okay, yeah, so I will pause it there for now. But yeah, again, we're gonna dig more into this report. Thank you very much for listening, and we'll go through the next couple of chapters and continue to break this down, because it's so important to build your families. It's so important to build your families. God has blessed the world with marriage, and even though the laws and everything make it even more difficult for men to get married, and I think also the behavior of this sort of more sexually liberated Western world that we live in makes it even more difficult to find a wife. Yeah, it's important that, you know, always aim to be a patriarch, to lead as a husband and as a father, because I know a lot of black men want to, or men in general, but black men in particular, want to be patriarchal and protective of its children. And this will help your children to develop educationally and to be what we want in society. And this is how we need to change our culture. We need to change the black culture, whether it's in the US or whether it's in Britain. So again, drop me a like, share it with one of your bros, take a screenshot, because I really want this to be very much informative and educational, and I will be connecting the dots, because a lot of people are just arguing online when we could actually be studying and actually benefiting ourselves when we look deeper into the issues and the problems affecting us. God bless.